Welcome to our program called Coming Out of the Shadows of Sexual Abuse. My name is Bill Casey, and I will moderate a conversation with three very courageous people whom you will meet momentarily. Each one is a victim of sexual abuse, two of them as children and one as an adult. Each one has gone through a long and painful journey that enables them to offer hope and compassionate support for other victims. Each is willing to share the story in this public forum because they want to encourage other victims to come forward and find support in a trusting environment, and to educate viewers about the insidious prevalence of sexual abuse in our society. Following the telling of each one's story, we will engage in a conversation about questions that will inevitably come to viewers' minds. Let me introduce those in the conversation. To my left is Wayne Duro, who was abused as a child by a trusted figure in his neighborhood. Becky Ianni, who was abused as a child by a Catholic priest in her parish. And Father Jim Moran, who was abused as an adult by another Catholic priest. Becky, will you tell your story first, please?
Yes. I was born in 1957 in Alexandria, Virginia. I was born into a devout Catholic family. My mother was raised Catholic. My father converted to Catholicism when I was around 4. Around that same time, we moved to a house on Putnam Place in Alexandria and became part of St. Mary's Parish. And when I became school age, I went to Catholic schools for elementary and for high school. In 1965, a newly ordained priest came to St. Mary's, which was our parish. He immediately became a favorite of everybody. He was very well liked. He had passionate homilies. The women thought he was good looking, and everyone trusted him. My brother at the time was studying to be an altar boy, and he befriended my brother, and through him befriended my family. And he became a permanent fixture in our house. He would come over and have dinner 2 or 3 times a week. He would say Mass in my basement. He led prayer groups in our house. He played with the kids in the neighborhood. All the parents trusted him and loved him, and I trusted him and loved him. This is a picture of about the age I was when I met him and when my abuse started. He also did things to make me feel special. He took me out of church one time and to have me take my picture in the paper with him for Ash Wednesday. He allowed me to go into the vestry of the church where the altar boys would change their clothes for Mass, and little girls weren't allowed in there, but he allowed me in there. He allowed me to go to his room up on the 3rd floor of the rectory. He went on vacation with us. He bought us our first color television. He had us come to the rectory to eat dinner with him. And so my parents trusted him and trusted us with him. And he used this trust and love that I had for him to abuse me. And I can remember the first time that he abused me. My mother was upstairs in the kitchen. I don't know whether she's making dinner or cleaning up for dinner. I could hear her up there. The television was on in the basement. And I was sitting on his lap, and I was thrilled because my brothers weren't around, and I was there all by myself. And I thought I have him all to myself because I loved him, and I wanted his attention. And he started rubbing my leg, and then he rubbed my leg underneath my nightgown. And I thought I was okay with that. It felt good, and I didn't think anything of it. And then he got more and more intimate until he basically raped me with his hands. And then I felt pain and confusion and fear. I think the biggest thing that I felt was fear. I froze. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do, and I couldn't say anything. Inside, I was saying, "Please stop," but I just froze. And I don't know how many times this happened. It happened over a period of 2 years. I don't know. It happened in the rectory. It happened in Ocean City, where he went on us with vacation. I used to hide when he came to the house so he wouldn't find me, but I never told anyone. I was too afraid. I thought I'd go to hell, and I blamed myself. because I had been told that priests were from God, and so I assumed that I was the bad little girl. I was the dirty little girl. I was at fault because it couldn't be him, so I assumed God was mad at me. So I was afraid to think about it, so I would go somewhere else in my head, and I buried it, and I didn't tell anyone. And then when I turned 48, I came across this picture of myself with him, and everything came flooding back. All of my memories came back, all of my fears. I would find myself on the bathroom floor reliving the abuse, crying, praying that maybe I wouldn't wake up the next day, that I wouldn't have to face the pain. And I don't think I ever realized how much mental pain can manifest itself physically. And I didn't know what to do with all these emotions. I thought I was going insane. And then I met another victim of my same perp. And he suggests that I call Survivors Network of those abused by priests and talk to someone. So I called David Klahesi, who's the president, and I spoke to him. And he suggested that I go to a support group. And so I did, and Wayne here was at my very first support group. And it was the most amazing, it was probably the best thing that I've ever done for myself, is going to the support group. For the first time, there were people there that I could talk to that knew and understood my pain, and they knew my shame, and I felt normal for the first time in my whole life. And I think that's when I began to heal. And since that time, I've become a leader in SNAP. And that has helped me too, because I felt a great deal of guilt for not coming forward and for not protecting those that were hurt after me. And so now I can do that, and I do that by being a leader in SNAP. Thank you.
Thank you, Becky, and thank you for the courage to share that story. I know that's very painful even now to talk about it. Jim, I'd ask you to tell your story next. It's going to be a little different context, but...
Right. We, well, first of all, the three of us are trying to make a point, if you will, of teaching non-victims something about what goes through the life and the emotions of a victim, whether they be children or vulnerable adults. And that's why we're coming together. We're not blaming any one particular organization or group. We're just sharing our lives and what happened. Like Becky, I was born in a typical Catholic family in a Catholic community. My house was, I think, 3 blocks from the church, St. Columbkille's in Brighton, Massachusetts. And church was very much a part of our life. You know, I joined the boys' choir when I was old enough. We just did everything in the church. It was an active place to be. When I was in the 2nd grade, in those days, 1952, the priests used to give out the report cards in the schools. And so, talk about intimidation. You know, not only did you have the dear nuns putting the fear of God, they brought in the priest to give you your marks, you know. And right after that, it was Father Frank Crowley gave me the report card, and the next period that we had in school was art classes. And so the nun said, draw a picture of what you want to be when you grow up. And I hadn't thought about anything about what I just wanted to get through 2nd grade. You know? So I figured, well, you know, Father Crowley was just here, so I drew a picture of a priest. And ever since then, you know, priesthood stuck with me, and it was just a thing that happened, and I was never forced into it. So I graduated high school and went into the seminary. And in my final year, my 8th year of studies, it's called the diaconate. In those days, it was called the not temporary, transitory diaconate, deacon internship, and we were placed in parishes. And I was in Sacred Heart Parish in Rosendale, Massachusetts, which was a huge parish. It was 4,500 families. It was a city of its own. One of the priests in that parish, just when I first met him, I did not like him. It was just personality, you know. And that was in May of 1970 that I went to that parish. In August, we were sitting at dinner. It was a very formal dinner, all the priests sitting around in their cassocks, and, you know, the pastor carved the meat and served the meat and just, you know, very formal. And somehow, or for some reason, I made the comment that I had no plans for my days off the next week. Well, this Father Tony Lorano practically came across the table at me, inviting me to go with him to a convention of puppeteers down in Connecticut to learn how to use puppets for telling Bible stories. And I'm sitting there saying, no way. Number one, do I want to use puppets? Number two, no way do I want to be with him. And then finally he told me that there was going to be another parishioner from the parish go with us. And I figured, okay, well, I won't be alone, so I agreed to go. The first night we were staying at one of his relatives. I think it was in Springfield, Massachusetts. It might have been in Connecticut, I'm not sure. After dinner that night, we were upstairs. There were 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. And we were playing cards and drinking. And about 11 o'clock, the last hand was dealt, and Tony announced that whoever won would decide who slept in what room. And so he won, so I stayed where we were, and he and, I think his name was Andy, went across to the other bedroom. I was no sooner in bed than he was back in the room, and he was jumping around like a kid in a candy store. I mean, he was just unbelievably juvenile. And next thing, he's jumping on top of the bed, pulling the blankets down, you know, and holding me down. And I'm trying to say no. And he's saying yes, yes, yes. And I'm saying no, no, no. And he's back and forth and back and forth. The only thought I had was I could throw him off the bed, but that's going to bring everyone looking to see what happened. And I was embarrassed as it was. So he did his thing, going to bed. The next day we went to the conference. The following morning I woke up. We were staying at a different house, and I woke up and I was running a temperature of like 101. And I believe it was from nerves. They went to the conference, came back, and that evening he took me out into the garden and told me that, number one, I had asked for it. Number two, he had no remorse for what he had done. And number three, he used to walk into my room at night in the rectory and watch me sleep. Well, my trust and my security just went out the window. I mean, I was violated without even knowing it.